get them, turned around in the right direction. But Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. in Virginia, so it'll be 8 p.m. here. There's an episode of What Does the Bible Say? And you can catch that at martinsvilecitynews.com. And then Thursdays, 8 p.m., which would be 7 p.m. here, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. here. That's myself and Mark McMinnis. Most of the times we do the programs together unless, something happens to one of us. And then James Oldfield, he has his program 8 to 9. His program is called A Word from the Lord. And if any of you are on Facebook, myself, Dad, and James Oldfield, we're all on Facebook, and we put the link for the TV program right there on our Facebook pages. So if you become our friends, you'll see us posting just about every Wednesday and every Thursday, and I don't have the Sunday up here. I just noticed that. Sundays, 8:30 to 10, which would be 7:30 to 9 here, there's another episode of What Does the Bible Say? That's Reedsville City News. So Thursdays and Sunday shows, you go to reedsvillecitynews.com and click on the live link. Or if you want to become friends with us on Facebook, you can do it that way because we'll post it right there on our Facebook page. And I believe that's about it. If you have any other questions, our cell phone numbers, 276-806-2150. Dad's email is BibleSays81@hotmail.com. Mine is 434-429-5221. Or danvillecofc@gmail.com. Like I said, if you want to friend us on Facebook, that'd be fine. Or if you want to, call us or email us with any type of questions, if you can't get the show, what have you, just let us know and we'll try to help you out the best that we can. And one other thing on this whole topic situation. Topics is actually, I don't know what I would do without topics. If you want to learn basic argumentation and how to deal with different situations that might arise, part of the reason why, TV has been kind of easy for me is because I've spent time on topics. And I've spent time looking at some of the posts that Sean has put up there. I'm telling you, Sean hammers them. Sean puts up great argumentation, and it's very easy and it's very simple to remember. So if you spend time, I encourage you to spend time on topics. Go ahead and make you an account. Get onto one of the links and just start discussing with people. Because it's really easy on the internet because you're not face-to-face. It's not spur of the moment. You can read through whatever they're saying, take your time, and give your response. Whereas with television, or if you're out knocking doors, it's just got to be right there. You've got to be ready for whatever comes at you. But if you spend enough time on topics and get the argumentation, you'll just about be ready for anything. So I encourage you to, even though they are saying some pretty hateful things, don't forget that we're doing what's right. They're just upset because they can't handle what we're saying and it's just eating away at them. Go ahead and look and see what these individuals are saying and see if you can give a rebuttal back. And it'll definitely be a great tool for you. And also, I want to show you a segment from our last tent meeting because I know Sean has been up to help us. And we encourage others to come up and help us as well. This is John Shannon. I don't know if he'll be back up to help us in Martinsville, but I think he'll be back with us in September to help James Oldfield with his tent meeting. And this is our atmosphere all the time. What you're about to see here in just a moment, this happens on a regular basis.
Okay, I heard what you said. You have a man. your church. Let's be honest. You have. What? Wait a minute. Go to Acts 2:42. That's good. Come on up. And they continue to faith in the apostle doctrine. Watch this man. If you follow the apostle doctrine, what do you need to remain? Come on. You gotta say it, man. True. Wait a minute. Do your church use manuals? True, yes or no? That's all you use. Wait a minute. What church do you use, first of all? Okay, is that any true? What you doing, man? No.
1906, okay, it hit America. Brother Johnny and I were talking about it last week.
Now here Brother John is in the middle of his lesson, and this individual raises his hand and asks a question. John just completely stops, whatever train of thought he had, and he begins discussing with this individual. We bring him up to the front, give him a microphone. This goes for about 13 minutes. Back and forth. John Shannon, this individual here, he's an apostolic preacher. It basically came down to, Romans chapter 16, verse 16. Salute you one another with a holy kiss. The Church of Christ salute you. Then John Shannon circled it and then put another circle and told him, okay, you put the verse for your church right here in this circle. Well, his church's name is Jesus' Name House of Prayer. Well, of course, we know you can't find that in the Scripture. So that pretty much ended it. But this is just how it goes with us. We make everything ready so that individuals, and we have individuals come in all the time, we don't know who they are. One year we had a group of Mormons come in. That was the last time we've ever seen a group of Mormons come in under our tent. But we did have a group of Mormons come in. They're elders. They're two young guys. And they started, trying to, do their best. I admire their zeal. And I, admire their want to, put out what they believe. But unfortunately, they're made fools of with what their doctrine is. But this is just how it goes. And you're not going to get this. John Shannon does it this way, of course. But in Virginia, you're not going to get anything else like this. This is how we do it. We work hard, but it's definitely a lot of fun. We're out getting to know one another, knocking doors with each other, trimming, hitting the bushes with each other. It's just a great time, and it's a great opportunity to work for the kingdom. So I know, Sean is wanting to come back up this year. If anybody else wants to come, we definitely would want you to come. We'd want you to experience it and to get to know the brethren up there in Virginia. So this morning, for our class, how long do y'all usually go for class, Sean?
About 45 minutes.
Okay. Well, somebody just
I'll let you know.
cut me off at some point then. We're going to talk about something I'm sure everybody is loving to talk about. Something, it's definitely on everybody's mind. We want to talk about debt this morning. And we'll go ahead and start with, a quick illustration, American debt. Debt per man, woman, and child. Snapshot today versus 1957. America's total debt restated as inflation adjusted per person, 5.6 times too much. This chart, I couldn't get the chart on there, shows total debt allotted on a per capita basis adjusted for inflation. The left bar, again, I couldn't get it on there, shows 1957 debt nationwide in today's dollars was $31,199 per man, woman, and child in 2008 dollars. If debt per person were only adjusted for inflation over the 51 years period, the right bar, 2008, should have remained the same size as the left bar at $31,199 per capita. But the right bar shows 2000 debt was $186,740 per man, woman, and child, 6.4 times higher per capita than in 1957. Adjusted for inflation, this data shows inflation-adjusted total debt load per person increased $155,541, equivalent to an increase of $622,164 per family of four. When I was going through high school, I was homeschooled because we spent another year overseas in 2001, And, of course, the standard for education is very low over there, so we began homeschooling, then went overseas and continued homeschooling when I came back home. When I was going through high school, my history teacher, I can't remember the exact amount that he said back during that time, but it's just something that's always stuck with me, and, I don't think a lot of people, really realize, but when a baby is born into this world, it's already born several $1,000s in debt just by being born. And yet we this definitely weighs on individuals' minds. If you're in debt, it worries you, doesn't it? It'll eat away at you. It'll, get to the point where it just completely consumes you. But what we want to talk about this morning is not the American debt, but the Christian debt. And as you can see here, I put a few names: Sheila, Bert, Clark, Levita, Marlon, James, Gary, and Eugene. Those are some members' names in Martinsville. But you can just go ahead and put, your names here. What about your debt this morning? Just as individuals being born into this world physically are born into debt, when we are reborn spiritually into Christ, there's a heavy debt put upon us then also. D. Hoff, in his lesson, What Wonderful Love, permit me to introduce our lesson with this sobering and thought-provoking statement. If you or I owned all the cattle on 10,000 hills and had 1,000,000 wells pumping oil 24 hours a day, could excavate from the earth every diamond and every ounce of gold it contains, could gather in from the 7 seas of the pearls deposited therein, and then could multiply all this wealth by 1,000,000,000-fold, we could not pay off the mortgage on one single soul. Nothing or no one can save us but Jesus Christ. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 15, this is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptation, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. Here you have Paul, an individual at one time who was going around persecuting the church, then meeting Christ on the road to Damascus, and then coming into contact with one of the messengers sent to him and obeying the gospel. Paul looked at himself as, I am the chief of sinners. I was going around persecuting the church, but now I have been given a second chance. I've been given a fresh start, a new opportunity to go out and do the work of the Lord. We need to have that same mindset that Paul had. We never need to lose the fact that at one time we were in this situation, lest we become like the Jews. What's the problem with the Jews? Jews are pompous. They are prideful. Part of what their problem is they're glorying within themselves. I'm of the seed of Abraham. I'm a child of Abraham. But we know in Romans chapter 4 that the real children of Abraham, the spiritual children of Abraham, are those who walk in the steps of faith of Abraham. And of course, they were not doing that. John chapter 15, verse 13, we read, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. And of course, we can kind of see that with, today's military, a band of brothers going into battle. And they go into battle with the mindset, no matter how old you are, and even today, no matter what sex you are, or what color you are. We are on a joint mission, we have a single goal, and we need to become victorious. And even if the case may be, if I have an opportunity, I will give myself for you. Romans chapter 5, verse 8, but God commendeth His love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It's one thing for an individual, okay, I already have a relationship with you, I love you, I would be willing to give my life for you. But what if somebody that was your enemy? Somebody that has just done you wrong your whole entire life? Could you then say, make the same statement? Even though you've mistreated me and, you've parked your car over on my property and done this and that and whatever, that I would still be willing to give my life for you. Well, Christ, of course, we know, did that for us. Notice 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 20. For ye are bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. Christ came to this earth to die for you, to purchase you. You belong to Him. But yet we find ourselves in a world today that is so covetous and so worried about self that this idea of, okay, I need to sacrifice myself and do whatever it is that God wants me to do, no, I think I've got better things to do. We are so materialistic in today's, and especially in this country, we're one of the biggest consumers now. Whereas we used to be one of the largest producers, we're now the ones who are consuming everything. Romans chapter 12, verse 1, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. We have a job to do. Not only did He come and die, did God the Father give His Son to come and die while we were yet enemies, lost in sin, that we could be redeemed, be forgiven, justified, acquitted of the charges that were held against us, and then we're going to turn around and say, well, I appreciate all that, and I'm going to obey the gospel, I'm going to be able to receive all these gifts, but, I've got my own plans, I've got my own goals, I've got my own ambitions that I want to fulfill, that I want to succeed in. My service I owe to you, we'll just put that on hold for now. We do not need to have this mentality. After all, that's the mentality of the false churches that are around us. What do? They go to church on Sunday, they go to church on Wednesday, and then they act up all days in between. The individual that I'm working with in Danville, Mark McMinnis, he was, I can't remember exactly what he was. He was in the Baptist church. I think he was in the Christian church at one time. Then he might have been in the Methodist. I don't know. But anyways, upon him hearing the truth and obeying it, he worked with the school system. He was a cabinet maker. 25 years in this position. When he obeyed the gospel and became a member of the Lord's body, he would go into work on Mondays after the program would be on Sundays, and all of his co-workers would be talking about the show. Well, the more he began to study, the more he began to attend, and the better equipped he became with the Word of God, he began to be able to put up a fight. He began to be able to discuss with these individuals. And they couldn't handle it. It came to the point, finally, that they went to Human Resources and filed a complaint against Mark for harassment. But yet they were the ones instigating the arguments. Well, not arguments, but discussions. I'm sure they turned into arguments. Some of the discussions that he told me about, some of these guys, in the Baptist church, some of them deacons, they talk about the parties that they go to over the weekend, wet t-shirt contests at the bar, and they'd be glorying in that. What about your service that you have to God, supposedly? Here you are, you're supposed to be belonging to God, belonging to Christ, following His example, but yet you're still drinking it up on the weekends? Still going to the bars? Mark lost his job with the school system, lost his retirement, because he was truly serving Christ. He was willing to make a stand. He stood fast on what the gospel had to say and stood up for the church, and it cost him his job. But of course, we turned that bad situation into a good situation. He's now preaching full time. Dad went out, raised his support, and now we're working together in Danville and doing the best that we can with Danville to make sure that, we all do what is our reasonable service for what God has in store with us. So let's go ahead and look, our debt is why. Why is it that we in the Lord's church are so different than everybody else? And we are different. If you don't think that you're different, I want to just go ahead and, again, like we've been discussing all morning, just start talking with somebody. Just start discussing with some of your friends that are in all these, other denominations or these false churches, and just try to make some comparisons. You might be able to make a few, but the majority, you're going to be completely different from what they're used to. We are a peculiar people. Our debt is why we care for each other. John chapter 13, verse 34, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another. Notice, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. Now, just as we went over this morning, we spent a lot of time talking about controversy and agitation and aggravation. That may come from the other side, but this is how we are supposed to be. We are supposed to be loving individuals, but does that mean that you don't tell somebody that what they're doing is wrong? Let's just ask the parents here this morning. Just because you discipline or you spank your child, does that mean you don't love them? Of course not. We all understand that the reason why you do spank that child is because you do love them. You're setting standards, you're setting boundaries, and you're showing that there are results or consequences. Thank you, Sean. Consequences for your actions. And you're trying to set them going down the right directions. You love them. You correct them. If you love others, those who are in these false churches and these denominations, if you truly love them, you would tell them what they need to know. You just go ahead and set the record straight. All you have to do is just that simple argumentation like John Shannon said. Where's your church in the Bible? Something so simple, but yet it'll get it'll get their brains running, trying to figure it out. There's an individual who's preaching in Fulbright. The reason why he's a member of the Church of Christ today is because when he was in second grade, a little girl in the Lord's church asked him what church he was in. I think he was in the Baptist church. And then she then came up with another question. Why are you in a church that's not in the Bible? You know what he did? He went home and asked Mama. Mama, why are we in a church that's not in the Bible? Don't worry about it. But he worried about it. It aided him for the rest of his life until he finally started studying and found out about the true church. Something so simple that can get people thinking, but yet, we shut ourselves down because we overthink things. And most of the time when we overthink things, we think in the negative. Well, if I say this, they're going to do that. Or if I say this, they're going to do this. You don't know what they're going to do. And if anything, the worst thing they're going to do is just say, I don't want to talk about it. Well, if they don't want to talk about it, fine. At least you gave an effort. At least you tried. At least you were doing part of your service for God. James chapter 5, verse 19 and 20, Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death and shall hide a multitude of sins. If you're going to say that you love individuals, this is part of it. He which converteth the sinner from error. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, that's Acts chapter 2, and Acts chapter 2, the whole account. Peter giving the first sermon on the day of Pentecost. In verse 37, what happens? They were pricked in their hearts. Why? What brought about that kind of result? Because Peter just plainly put it out. You have crucified the Son of God. If you want to talk about being frank, that's as plain as you can get. Not only are you involved in all these other things, but you have just crucified the man who was here to save you. And it pricked them. It hurt them. It stung them. But of course we know the end result. It brought about a new birth. It brought about saved individuals. All because they were told what they did and what they were doing. 2 Timothy 4 and verse 2, something I'm sure we're all familiar with this. Preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. Preach the word when they do want to hear it and when they don't want to hear it. And brothers and sisters, I believe we're in a time where they just don't want to hear it. And I don't know how it is here, but in Danville, we are struggling trying to find those individuals who still care about what the Bible actually says. I had a clip here that I was going to play. It was a clip of one of the shows that Sean did with Mark. And the individual said, I want you to show me, or he might have said, I want you to show me, or I've never read a passage in the Bible where it says that you are saved by baptism. Sean took him to 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 21. he would not read 1 Peter 3:21. Now that's pretty bad when you're not even willing to read a passage of the Bible just because it goes against what you honestly believe. And you can believe it, as sincerely as you want to believe it. But if it doesn't line up with the Bible, it's just wrong. There's no other way of putting it. That is just flat out dishonesty. And we have individuals, we run into preachers. That's one of the things that we've gotten to where we ask them all the time as our initial question. We take them to Acts chapter 2, 37, 38, and we ask them, will you preach the same thing that Peter preached, an apostle? No. And then we ask kind of just put this question out there. Well, okay then, why should we follow you if you're not willing to follow Peter? A man selected by Christ himself to go out and preach the gospel, but you're not willing to preach what he preached. Why should we follow you? Individuals today, they give no regard to what the Bible actually says. And then this whole idea here about reproving and rebuking, nobody wants to do that today. Just like I brought up a minute ago, that Baptist church and that deacon. We'll just sweep it under the rug. Nobody will know about it. And it'll just, hopefully it'll just disappear. Instead of going ahead and addressing the issues and just getting it out of the way. But all this is supposed to be done in long suffering. You still have to be merciful with the individuals that you're dealing with. Because after all, we were all in this state at one time. We were all sinners. Why are you now, since you have gotten saved, or not gotten, have received salvation, why are you now going to be puffed up and boasting and think yourself mightier or holier than thou? Mercy, loving, tenderness, and long-suffering is all involved in preaching the word and in the rebuking and the exhortation. Okay, it's just the Greek definitions for rebuking. Let me get them straight. For reprove, rebuke, and exhort. Of uncertain affinity, to confute, admonish, or to convict, convince, tell a fault, rebuke, or reprove. Man, I'm having a hard time with that one. Reprove. That would be, I need to get these. That's reprove. The next one is rebuke. From 1909 and 5091, to tax upon, censure, or admonish, by implication forbid, straitly charge, rebuke. And this is exhort. From 3844 and 2564, to call near, invite, invoke, by imploration, hortation, or consolation, beseech, call for, be of good comfort or desire, give, exhort, exhortation, entreat, or to pray. As you can see, there's no hostility given within these definitions. There's no reason to just be jumping down people's throat with what they're doing is wrong. Sure, you need to go ahead and point out what they're doing is wrong, but it needs to be handled in a correct manner. You need to keep in the back of your mind, okay, I need to show mercy in this case because you never know, I might find myself in a similar case. And then what's going to be happening? Well, you're going to be wanting mercy too. The debt that we have is also the reason for why we assemble together. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. We need to be here. Because with the way that this world is, with how entangled our lives can get and just how busy our lives can get, you can quickly forget about the debt that you owe to Christ and get more consumed with what you have going on. There's individuals, I used to work at a nursery before I started preaching full-time, nursery dealing with plants, not with kids. And just the amount of money that was being generated by that nursery. by individuals who are just spending so much time out in their yards. It was unreal to me. It's just unreal. And I would see some of these individuals several times throughout the same week, coming in and getting more plants, coming in and getting more mulch, coming in and getting more rock. And it's just like, is this how you spend all your time? Which, of course, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with spending time in your yard. I'm sure, in some senses it's very therapeutic. It just, allows you to release and allows you to forget about the strain and worries of the world. But when you allow that to become your main thought, your main purpose, I just live here for my yard. That's all I think about it. It's taking care of my yard. Or some individuals, how they are with their favorite sports teams. Up in Martinsville, we have NASCAR. We have our own NASCAR track right there in Martinsville. You would not believe the decrease in church attendance on Sundays when the race comes to town. Not so much with us, but just with the individuals that are around us. There was a Baptist church located right next door. They would have their services on Saturday, so that if individuals wanted to go to the race on Sunday, they could, and then they wouldn't have to deal with the traffic either. You have just, you've just put NASCAR in the place of God. But why do they do it? Well, it's to appease the people. That's what they want. That's what we'll give them. But what about what God is wanting? What about what God had planned and what Christ went through so that you could have all these good things? Romans chapter 8, verse 32, He that spared not His own Son, but delivered Him up for us all, how shall He not with Him also freely give us all things? God has given us so much already. I honestly cannot see how individuals live with themselves in thinking that, okay, all this has been done for me, but then I'm going to turn around and do as little as I can. I'm just going to do what I can just to kind of slip by, just kind of sneak my way into heaven. I just don't see how people do that. I do not see how people can go through, and it's not just with the Lord's church, but just individuals out in the Baptists and everywhere else. Okay, I'll do what I'm supposed to do on Sundays and on Wednesdays, and if we have our bake sales or yard sales or fish fries or whatever, I'll be there for that too. But then the rest of the time, it's my time. We have a news anchor in Reedsville. Her name is Jessica Griffith. Her dad is a pastor, and she supposedly is a pastor also. But yet, it's almost like she's just a pastor on Sundays or when she's at church. Because when she's on her news broadcast and she has individuals that she knows about, there's one clip that we have, she's actually joking with a man because he was married to this one woman, but yet he was over here living with his girlfriend. Now here she is as a pastor, she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be a pastor, but yet she's joking around with this guy because he's fornicating. And then on top of that, another one of her shows, she had an open homosexual on there with her, and they were just bantering back and forth and going on and on like everything was okay. Luckily, our show comes on after her show, so usually we get there about 30 minutes early just to see what Jessica's going to say so we can correct it. Because people do not need to see that as an example of what Christianity is supposed to be. People, and that goes back to what we were discussing this morning about us needing to be more vocal. The false churches are being so vocal, are being so loud, and individuals on the outside looking in, they see the hypocrisy. This one individual, this one couple that we're studying with, we went through the second Bible study, and he asked us this question. He said, do you think it's the case that some of these preachers, he says pastors, but do you think some of these preachers just don't know what they're teaching? They're just so unlearned that they just don't know? Or is it that they do know, but the people sitting in the pew are just so ignorant that they're just being led astray? And I looked at him and I said, well, it's both. But he doesn't realize, me and Mark, we were discussing, why is it that he's not in church? He drives the van for this Baptist church, but he doesn't go in. He doesn't attend. Well, he just told us right there. He's one of those ignorant individuals sitting in the pew. He knows it. He told it to us. He said, I don't study my Bible like I should. He's one of those ignorant people that would be sitting in the pew that would be taken advantage of. He doesn't even go in because he doesn't want to be taken advantage of. These individuals on the outside looking in see the hypocrisy, and it's pretty much, well, I mean, you know, if I want to live the way I want to live, then I'll just live the way I want to live, and I'll keep my money on top of that. Because that's pretty much all they're doing. They're living their lives the way they want to, but on Sundays and Wednesdays and whenever, well, they pass the plate every day of the week. You know, I'll just come in and I'll put my money in the plate and I'm okay. The only difference between a person going to church and a person out in the world is the person out in the world keeps their money. They spend their money how they want to. But it's all dealing with this idea is, you know, nobody is willing to sacrifice themselves like Christ sacrificed for us. Nobody is willing to realize the amount of debt that we are under. Our debt is also why we work. Isn't that why people work today? If you're in debt, what are you working for? You're working to pay off whatever debt you're in. This needs to be the same mentality that we have in the Lord's church. God has done all of this for us. He sent His Son to this earth to die for us while we were still yet enemies. Now I am saved. I need to get to work. I have a service. I have an amount that I need to reach. And this is a lesson that I've done in Martinsville. I mean, this is why we knock doors. This is why we go through the Bible studies that we go through. Individuals that, you know, they volunteer to mow the grass, to keep the building looking nice, cleaning the building. And all of that is going towards, you know, you're taking time away from your schedule to help with some of the Lord's keeping. Teaching in the Bible classes. You know, some individuals in Martinsville, they are going out of their comfort zone. You know, some individuals, they really don't like to talk and they really don't like to do certain things, but we encourage them. You know, we know that you don't like to do these things, but there's a need over here that needs to be met. And we just kind of nudge them out the door, out of their comfort zone. And just go ahead and open them up, you know, to it. And some individuals, they're still teaching Bible classes because of it. But it's mainly because, we've got a need in the kingdom that needs to be filled. Why not you? Why not you go ahead and put forth an effort for what we're doing? The TV programs that we do, I tell you, I am a nervous wreck every Thursday. I wake up on Thursday morning stressed out because I have to get ready for TV. I have to prep myself, and when those phone numbers go up, my stress goes through the roof because you never know who is going to call in. And we have some crazy folks calling in, and it's just you've got to be on your toes. You've got to be ready. Why do we put ourselves through this kind of stuff? I'm already getting gray hairs, and I'm 22. I'll go ahead and admit a lot of it's hereditary, so it'll be okay. But still, why go ahead and put yourself through that amount of stress and through that kind of turmoil for people who really seems like it doesn't even care? They don't even care. It's because I have a debt that I'm trying to pay back. All of this was done for me. I'm going to try to do what I can. 2 Timothy 4 and verse 5, but watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. And this is also a part of what we do in Martinsville. A lot of individuals, they don't even understand, they don't even realize that this is in the Bible, that they're supposed to be making full proof of thy ministry. That's exactly what we're trying to do. The reason why we work so hard, the reason why we do the things that we do, is because, it's all part of this debt. It's part of what we owe. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. And I believe this is a concept that's being overlooked in, a lot of callers that call into our TV program. They want to ask us, well, how many members do you have they always say your church, and we have to correct them that we don't have a church. But how many members do you have at your church? Or how many members are up there in Martinsville? How many are down there in Eden? And we ask them, what difference does that make? What difference does the number make? It's all about the labor. We are not going to be rewarded based upon the number of people we have sitting in the building. You're going to be rewarded by the amount of effort, by the amount of work and labor that is done. Colossians chapter 1, verse 10, that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. These individuals that are caught up so much in the numbers, they think that, okay, all these individuals are involved, it must be the right thing. Billy Graham, that's one thing I forgot to mention in my presentation. Billy Graham has his big, he calls it a library, but really all it is just an attraction for him. You go walking through it, and it gives, all the different places that he's been. There's one section, there's one huge wall of all the presidents that he's ministered to. And then you go into another room, and it's got all these shiny glass cases. There's a Louisville Slugger signed by somebody. There's a helmet from the North Carolina Panthers that I think the whole football team has signed. When individuals follow him, some individuals follow him, why? Well, he's got this big gathering. He's got this big group. He must be doing something right. Well, let's just use some common sense here. Does the majority always mean that something's right? Let's just look at Hitler. The huge following that Hitler had following him. Or even Mussolini down there in Italy with the fascist movement. Was that correct? He had a ton of people following him. It's not about the number. It's about how much you are doing for God after all that He has done for you. Okay. Jeremiah chapter 31, 33, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sins no more. This is what we need to be about in verse 33. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts. This idea of the debt that we owe needs to continuously be on our minds. Some individuals, when it comes to physical gain, they will work themselves to death. They will work themselves into an early grave just to make sure that they are financially settled. But this morning, as we close, will you work this hard for the debt that you owe to Christ? Will you work this hard to make sure that you're doing everything that is possible to help the kingdom after God has done everything possible to make sure that you can be saved? All right. Any questions, comments? Anything at all? If not, you can ask me afterwards also. I'll be hanging around, so.
Good job.
All right. All right, we're dismissed.